No, and he got in with a very low proportion of the vote. He got in by default because people were unhappy with the Conservatives. They voted Labour. They didn't particularly like him. And now it's gone from bad to worse. He's been caught accepting donations to pay for his wife's dresses. He's been accepting more freebies than any other MP in Parliament. But meanwhile, because of their disastrous economic policies...
Liz Truss just dropped a bombshell on Keir Starmer, our so-called Prime Minister. And let's be real, the guy is probably hiding his face somewhere after this. And it all went down right at the heart of London's biggest news channel, where Truss showed everyone exactly why the whole Parliament is terrified of standing in front of this short-haired baddie. Trust me, there's a reason for this public humiliation. For proof, just take a look at Starmer's gang before the election, desperately begging for votes with all their fake promises.
Raise taxes on working people.
We have said we're not raising taxes on working people.
And we're not going to be increasing taxes on working people.
We're not increasing taxes on working people.
That is a commitment not to increase taxes on working people.
I don't believe it's fair to raise taxes on working people.
Now, let's be honest. Do you see any of those promises coming to life? Nope, obviously not. And that's precisely why Truss went off, labelling Starmer the biggest liar the UK has ever seen. She tore into his so-called plans for helping the country and laid out the brutal truth. Once he got into power, he'd have thanked working people with a $500 tax. Rubbish planning at its finest, right?
I had to take the decision, because of the economic situation, to adjust our policies. I am somebody who's prepared to front up. I'm prepared to take the tough decisions. Unlike the honourable gentleman, who hasn't done anything on businesses, he's done nothing to say he'll protect people after 1 year. He's got no plan.
Let's start from this recent Wednesday PMQs, where Truss answered every jab from Starmer as if she was nailing it. The tax cuts and economic implosion? Irrelevant, because she'd delivered on the energy price guarantee. The tanking credibility? Doesn't matter, she'd have delivered on national insurance tweaks. And as for the mess she's left behind, her solution: blame militant trade unions and vow to stop them. Every response sounded like a highlight reel from an alternate universe, where her government wasn't crashing and burning in real time.
Mr. Speaker, what our budget has delivered is security for families for the next 2 winters. It's made sure that we're going to see higher economic growth, lower inflation and more opportunities. The way that we will get our country growing is through more jobs, more growth, more opportunities, not through higher taxes, higher spending, and his friends in the union stopping hard-working people get to work.
Liz Truss, champion of economic chaos, stood her ground as Starmer delivered his critiques. Homeowners slapped with an extra $500 on their mortgages. Oh, not to worry, she countered with her energy price guarantee, a classic case of addressing the wrong disaster. When asked if the public would ever forgive the Conservatives for their kamikaze budget, Truss confidently declared her plan delivered higher economic growth and lower inflation. Someone forgot to inform reality. Her solution to soaring mortgage rates, the holy trinity of buzzwords, jobs, growth and opportunities, clearly that'll pay the bills.
Mr. Speaker, the action we have taken has meant that families in Scotland and across the United Kingdom are not facing gargantuan energy bills. And what the honourable gentleman and his friends in Scotland could do to help us out is build the nuclear power stations that are going to help our energy security, help us get more gas out of the North Sea to help deliver on a more secure energy future for all of our people.
Ian Blackford chimed in with his usual eloquence, pointing out that mortgages were spiralling thanks to Truss's fiscal brilliance. Her response? A detour into nuclear power stations in Scotland, because nothing says, "we understand your pain," like proposing energy projects that take decades to complete. As the session dragged on, her own backbenchers cheered with all the enthusiasm of people who'd realised they were stuck on a sinking ship. The Conservatives, under Truss's expert leadership, weren't just flirting with disaster, they were diving headfirst into it with a budget that might as well have been written on monopoly money.
Well, we have taken action on helping families heat their homes, and that's been very important, and I would love to see more support on delivering the energy security we need. Interest rates are rising globally. That is a fact. and interest rates are a decision for the Independent Bank of England. But I want to do all I can to help families across Britain.
Liz Truss entered the Commons ready to defend her government's train wreck of a mini-budget, but instead of answers, she delivered what can only be described as political tap dancing. When Keir Starmer grilled her about the chaos her policies unleashed, skyrocketing mortgage rates, a plummeting pound, and devastated first-time buyers, Truss didn't blink. No, she blamed global factors and reminded everyone, repeatedly, that her energy price guarantee was saving the nation from ruin.
A few weeks ago, Zach and Rebecca from Wolverhampton were all set to buy their first home. Then the government's borrowing spree sent interest rates spiralling and their mortgage offer was withdrawn. I met them last week. They're back to square one, unable to buy, devastated, sick to the back teeth with excuses and blame shifting. Does the Prime Minister understand why Zach and Rebecca are completely furious with her?
Starmer tried to inject reality into the debate, sharing the plight of Zach and Rebecca, a young couple whose mortgage dreams were shattered. Truss's response, a lecture on energy bills that conveniently ignored her government's role in tanking the market. She even accused Labour of opposing her energy plan, as if that deflection would erase the fallout from her reckless tax cuts.
Mr. Speaker, we are spending almost £1 trillion of public spending. We were spending 700 billion back in 2010. What we will make sure is that over the medium term, the debt is falling. But we will do that not by cutting public spending, but by making sure we spend public money well. And the honourable gentleman talks about our spending, which he doesn't seem to support.
When Starmer pointed out her gift-wrapped tax breaks for the wealthy, Truss feigned ignorance, acting as if her policies weren't tilting the economy in favour of landlords and stockholders. Instead of addressing his questions, she parroted lines about global pressures and made vague claims about record public spending. Starmer reminded her that Labour proposed the energy price freeze first, a fact she completely sidestepped. Truss, in typical fashion, ignored the inconvenient truth, insisting she had the situation under control while the country watched interest rates climb and their savings evaporate. Truss hadn't answered a single question directly, and Starmer walked away with his attacks intact. The only real takeaway? Liz Truss is a master at dodging accountability, but unfortunately for her, the numbers don't lie.
I've got the list here. 45p tax cut, gone. Corporation tax cut, gone. 20p tax cut, gone. 2-year energy freeze, gone. Tax-free shopping, gone. Economic credibility, gone. And her supposed best friend, the former Chancellor, he's gone as well. They're all gone. So why is she still here?
Keir Starmer tried to shred Liz Truss with a simple inventory of failures. 45p tax cut, scrapped. Corporation tax cut, axed. Energy freeze, history, tax-free shopping, forget it. Economic credibility, long gone. Even her so-called best friend, the Chancellor, out the door. And after all that, the only mystery left was why she was still around. Truss, in full denial mode, declared herself a fighter, not a quitter, because nothing says leadership like ignoring a self-made disaster. She rattled off achievements, energy price guarantees, national insurance tweaks, and promises to fend off militant trade unions, as though any of that erased the wreckage of her government.
To say she's sorry. What does she think people will think and say? That's all right, I don't mind financial ruin, at least she apologised.
Liz Truss decided to show up and remind everyone she's still the Prime Minister, despite, well, everything. Keir Starmer, ever the hero, called out the rising mortgages, blaming her for the economic disaster she helped create. Truss's brilliant response? A half-hearted, "I'm sorry," because that totally makes it all better, right? Apparently, she thought people would just shrug and go, "Oh, financial ruin, that's fine, at least she apologised." Then, in what can only be described as a desperate comeback, Truss blamed global interest rates for the mess. "It's not just me, okay? The whole world is at fault," she practically shouted, as if we didn't already know the global economy exists. But sure, let's pretend it wasn't her economic plan that tanked everything.
It's unilateral economic disarmament. While India and China are building more coal-fired power stations, getting more oil and gas, we in Britain have ended up closing down our oil and gas. This is what's happening under this Labour government. We've just closed our last steelworks, producing virgin steel because energy is unaffordable. The British government is refusing to do fracking, which could make our energy cheaper. And it's a disaster. Our economy is stagnating. Meanwhile, China is selling us solar panels.
But Truss wasn't done. Oh no, she went after Starmer's economic genius by calling out the mess they've made, cutting payments to the elderly, bungling energy policies, and pushing net zero like it's going to fix all the world's problems. Meanwhile, China and Russia keep building coal plants and laughing from the sidelines. But who cares about that? Closing steelworks and banning fracking sounds like such a better idea. She then decided to really stir the pot by explaining how Britain's unelected bureaucrats are the real rulers. Sorry, ministers, step aside. It's the nameless, faceless bureaucrats pulling the strings now. And don't forget the cherry on top, the whole woke agenda. Truss hammered home the absurdity of denying biological facts, while putting women in dangerous situations just for the sake of inclusivity. You'd think we'd have outgrown this, but apparently not.
The victims of crime who can't get justice. People dying because ambulances can't get there in time. Millions going without food or heating. And none of it can drum into the Tories the idea that our country must come first.
Keir Starmer doing what he does best, throwing around chaos and blame. Last night in Parliament, he really outdid himself, calling it a new chaotic low even by Tory standards. But hey, nothing says I've got a handle on things like pointing out that everything's falling apart after 12 years. Crime victims can't get justice, ambulances can't make it in time, people are freezing and starving. Oh, and let's not forget, the country's finances are shattered. Keir's conclusion? The Tories just don't care. No patriotic duty, just petty squabbles.
Spooking the markets and increasing the cost of borrowing, increasing the cost of mortgages was almost certainly an act of gross incompetence rather than malevolence.
But of course, what does Keir think? That we all need a general election, right now, as if that's going to magically fix the disaster. Because who doesn't want to see more of this, right? Britain deserves better, and only Keir Starmer has the answer. An election that he's been waiting for. Perfect, just what we need. Oh, and let's not forget, Liz Truss is probably out there laughing, knowing that while Starmer is busy pointing fingers, he's done nothing to fix anything himself.